There was a time when appearing in Playboy didn't ruin a career. It launched one. From the 1960s through the 1990s, the magazine wasn't just a men's publication. It was a stage, a cultural lightning rod, and for many actresses, it was a way to seize control of how the world saw them. These women weren't anonymous models. They were stars, some at their peak, others on the rise, and many reinventing themselves against all odds. Together, they created an archive of images that lived far beyond glossy pages. Through VHS tapes, dorm room posters, and whispered conversations, they became icons, not because they were perfect, but because they were bold. This is the story of the unforgettable actresses who redefined fame by stepping into Playboy. Their choices shocked, inspired, and in some cases, changed everything. Marilyn Monroe. In the conservative post-war era, the Hollywood studio system still had a tight grip on its stars, dictating their images and personal lives. But there was one actress who refused to be contained. Before she became the global icon, Marilyn Monroe was still Norma Jean Mortensen, a struggling model and actress. In 1949, broke and in need of money, she posed for a series of nude photos for a calendar. It was a purely pragmatic decision. Fast forward to 1953, and a young publisher named Hugh Hefner bought those images. The inaugural issue of Playboy hit the shelves with Marilyn on the cover. The magazine sold out instantly, and Marilyn was thrust into a new echelon of stardom. Her response to the press was legendary. "It's no big deal. I needed the money." This single, defiant act was a masterstroke of authenticity. It took a potential scandal and turned it into an act of profound self-awareness, making her a symbol of vulnerability and power. Marilyn didn't just appear in Playboy, she legitimized it and set the stage for every actress who would follow. Jayne Mansfield. As Marilyn Monroe's fame soared, the studio system looked for a new blonde bombshell to fill the void. They found her in Jayne Mansfield. She was an exaggerated version of the archetype, with a larger-than-life personality and a relentless ambition for fame. Jayne was more than willing to lean into the spectacle, and her relationship with Playboy was instrumental in her rise. Her first appearance was in 1955, followed by a series of iconic covers and pictorials throughout the late 50s. She used the magazine not just to showcase her beauty, but to amplify her persona. She was a master of self-promotion in a way that Marilyn was not, and she was always in on the joke. Her choices made her a direct rival to Marilyn, and a sensation in her own right. Jayne's pictorials cemented her as the queen of the bombshells, a woman who embraced the media circus and used Playboy as her primary stage. Elizabeth Taylor. While many actresses used Playboy to launch their careers, there was one who represented the magazine's ultimate unreachable fantasy. Elizabeth Taylor. A true Hollywood queen, Taylor was already a global icon with multiple Academy Awards and a famously tumultuous love life that was its own form of media spectacle. Hugh Hefner pursued her relentlessly for years, but she was never a woman who needed a magazine to define her. Her story is a fascinating counterpoint. She was the one who held all the power. The magazine's desire for her presence only proved how much cultural capital it had. She was a living testament to the fact that some stars were so big, they didn't need a platform. They were the platform. Her story reveals just how much Playboy craved legitimacy by associating with Hollywood's most untouchable stars. Ursula Andress. When Ursula Andress emerged from the ocean in Dr. No in 1962, she wasn't just a Bond girl. She was a cinematic bombshell who embodied the simmering sexual revolution of the early 60s. The image of her in that white bikini became a global phenomenon, but she still existed within the confines of the studio system. By the time she posed for Playboy in 1965, she was already an international star who didn't need the publicity. Her decision was a calculated move that elevated Playboy's credibility by proving that a top-tier star would use its pages. The pictorial was bold but tasteful, and it sent a clear message. She was an international celebrity who was in complete control of her image. It wasn't an act of rebellion. It was a show of quiet power, proving that glamour and agency could go hand in hand. Raquel Welch. By the late 1960s, Raquel Welch had become a global sex symbol, but she was famously private and protective of her image. Her 1966 poster in a fur bikini from 1 million years BC was a cultural touchstone, but she was determined to be more than just a pinup. For years, she resisted Playboy's offers, carefully curating her public persona. But in 1979, she finally agreed under one strict condition: no nudity. This was a direct challenge to the magazine's foundation. The resulting spread was a masterclass in negotiation and control. It proved that her power lay not just in her image, but in her command over it. The pictorial was less about what was shown and more about what was held back, proving that suggestion could be more powerful than exposure. Raquel used the platform on her own terms, cementing her legacy as a savvy businesswoman and an untouchable icon. Dolly Parton. In a world where many stars took themselves too seriously, Dolly Parton was a breath of fresh air. A country music icon, Dolly has always been a master of her own brand, a playful mix of rhinestone glamour, sharp wit, and unshakable talent. In 1978, she posed for Playboy, not for credibility or to launch a new career phase, but as a pure celebration of who she was. The pictorial was less about a shocking reveal and more about a joyful, confident display of her persona. Dolly famously said that her look was her own invention, and her Playboy feature was a testament to that. She used the magazine on her own terms, and her appearance didn't define her. It simply affirmed what her fans already knew. She was in complete control of her image and her narrative. Marilyn Chambers. While other actresses used Playboy to control their images, Marilyn Chambers used it to shatter them completely. In the early 1970s, Chambers was a clean-cut model for Ivory Soap, known for her wholesome girl-next-door look. But in 1972, she made a radical move by starring in the pornographic film Behind the Green Door. Her decision to go from a wholesome ad icon to a porn star made headlines and shocked the nation. Playboy was one of the few mainstream platforms that embraced her. Her pictorial was a testament to the magazine's rebellious spirit. Her story highlights a more radical form of agency, where an actress intentionally crossed a cultural boundary and used Playboy to bridge the gap, becoming a living symbol of rebellion and sexual liberation. Kim Basinger. The 1980s saw the rise of a new Hollywood, where actors had more creative control. Kim Basinger was perfectly positioned for this new era. In 1983, just as her career was gaining momentum, she appeared in Playboy in a pictorial that was less about being a pinup and more about being a serious screen presence. Shot with moody lighting and a noir styling, the photos framed her as a star in transition, hinting at the complex, sensual, and ultimately powerful characters she would later embody in films like 9½ Weeks. The shoot wasn't meant to shock. It was meant to be seen as cinematic art. Her appearance demonstrated her artistic seriousness and willingness to explore the tension between innocence and danger, a theme that would become her signature. Sybil Danning. While mainstream Hollywood was busy with blockbusters, a vibrant world of B-movies and cult cinema was thriving. Sybil Danning was a queen in this world, an unapologetic force of nature known for her fierce, commanding roles in action and sci-fi films. Her Playboy features in the 1980s were not a bid for mainstream fame. They were an authentic extension of her on-screen persona. She leaned into her legend, refusing to soften her image. The photos celebrated her strength and larger-than-life presence, solidifying her status as a cult icon. Sybil proved that Playboy wasn't just for America's sweethearts. It was a stage for rebels who defined their own rules. Bo Derek. In 1979, Bo Derek became a cultural phenomenon after her breakout role in the film 10. Her cornrows and slow-motion beach run became an obsession, and she became a symbol of a new, natural beauty. When she appeared in Playboy, it was a subversion of the magazine's typical purpose. She didn't need the magazine to become a star. The magazine needed her to remain culturally relevant. Her multiple pictorials, often shot by her husband, were intimate and collaborative. They weren't exploitative. They were a continuation of her brand of calm, confident power. Bo Derek wasn't being posed. She was presenting herself. She proved that a superstar could command the space, making the magazine a vehicle for her established fame, not a source of it. Barbra Streisand. In a Hollywood obsessed with a specific type of glamour, Barbra Streisand was an anomaly. An acclaimed singer, actress, and director, she defied conventional beauty standards and built her career on immense talent and a fiery sense of self. In 1977, she posed for Playboy in an artful and personal pictorial. This wasn't for fame. She was already at the top of her game. It was a direct challenge to the industry that had often called her unattractive. Her pictorial was a powerful statement of self-acceptance and a bold assertion that a woman could be a creative genius and a sexual being on her own terms, without fitting into any predefined box. Barbra's appearance was a victory for artistic agency and a bold act of defiance against the very notion of a Hollywood type. Madonna. In the early 1980s, Madonna was an emerging pop star whose provocative image was a direct challenge to the more wholesome music icons of the day. In 1985, as her fame exploded, Playboy released nude photos she had posed for years earlier when she was a struggling artist. Most stars would have panicked, but Madonna's reaction was a masterstroke of brand creation. She didn't hide. She laughed it off, turned it into a media circus, and famously declared, "I'm not ashamed." She took a potentially career-ending scandal and transformed it into a core part of her identity. A woman who was in complete control of her sexuality and her narrative. Her decision proved that no one could use a scandal against her if she claimed it first. Sharon Stone. Before she was a household name, Sharon Stone was a working actress struggling for a breakout role. She was a known face, but not a star. In 1990, she made a deliberate, strategic move by posing for Playboy. The pictorial wasn't a last resort. It was an act of self-promotion. The photos were bold and deliberate, showcasing an alluring, dangerous confidence. Just 2 years later, she landed the role of Catherine Trammell in Basic Instinct. When the film exploded, her Playboy images resurfaced, but instead of being a liability, they were a testament to her calculated rise. Her cold, unapologetic stare back at the camera in the shoot was a preview of the dominant screen presence that would make her the most talked-about woman in Hollywood. Farrah Fawcett. In the 1970s, Farrah Fawcett was a national obsession, but she struggled for years to be taken seriously as a dramatic actress. By the 1990s, she was facing Hollywood's ageism. In 1995, at 48 years old, she posed for Playboy, and the issue shattered sales records. The photos, shot by Greg Gorman, were artistic and raw, showcasing a woman who had lived, struggled, and come to terms with her own power. This wasn't a comeback. It was an act of defiance. Farrah didn't pose to spark scandal. She posed to remind the world that she was still a relevant, powerful, and beautiful woman on her own terms. Drew Barrymore. Drew Barrymore grew up in the public eye, and her struggles with addiction and a tumultuous childhood were tabloid fodder. By the mid-90s, she was often portrayed as a cautionary tale. Her 1995 Playboy shoot was a conscious and powerful rejection of that narrative. At just 19, she took control of her body and public image. The pictorial was playful, defiant, and celebratory, a clear message that she was no longer a child star, but a liberated woman in charge of her own destiny. Her public antics, like famously flashing David Letterman, only reinforced her control. Drew proved that she wasn't a victim of her past, she was the architect of her future. Pamela Anderson. The 1990s was the golden age of celebrity culture, and no one understood it better than Pamela Anderson. Discovered after being put on a jumbotron at a football game, she became a record-breaking Playboy star, appearing on 14 covers. Her relationship with the magazine was a deliberate career strategy. She used the platform to build a brand identity and leverage it into acting roles on Baywatch and pop culture notoriety. While the world saw her as a fantasy, she was a savvy businesswoman. For better or worse, Pamela Anderson was Playboy's ultimate icon, a perfect blend of brand awareness and cultural zeitgeist that made her an eternal symbol of the era. The late 90s and early 2000s saw the final wave of Playboy stars as the internet began to challenge the magazine's cultural dominance. Jenny McCarthy, crowned Playmate of the Year in 1994, used the platform as a successful launchpad into television and mainstream media. Following in Pamela Anderson's footsteps, Carmen Electra made Playboy her calling card, and one of the last great bombshells of the print era. And in 2004, Denise Richards used a Playboy pictorial to celebrate her status as a Hollywood star and tabloid fixture. These women represented the final gasp of an era, using the magazine as a last hurrah just as the internet began to render its role in pop culture obsolete. For decades, Playboy wasn't just a magazine. It was a cultural mirror that reflected Hollywood's shifting power dynamics, from Marilyn's survival to Farrah's reclamation, from Pamela's domination to Madonna's reinvention. It blurred the lines between scandal and stardom, becoming a tool for women to define themselves on their own terms. The stories we've explored today are a powerful reminder that while the magazine may have been a male fantasy, the women who graced its pages were not passive objects. They were strategic, defiant, and in charge. They used a controversial platform to showcase their intelligence, their wit, and their courage. In the end, what they created wasn't just a collection of provocative images. It was a visual history of female agency in an era that tried to contain it. The women weren't just in Playboy, they defined it. And in doing so, they left behind a legacy that continues to inspire and challenge our ideas about fame, beauty, and power.